So then in 92, I think it was, Jim Cornette started up, or I guess he's the one who started up Smoky Mountain. And that was the promotion I was into at the onset of this. But when I saw you guys, it was you and Stan Lane going against the Rock and Roll Express. That was the first match I ever got to see you wrestle. And so I had to know more about it. And I saw you guys had matches with the Rock and Roll Express, the Fantastics, who are another group who I think they were so underrated as well. And then you got paired up with Jimmy Del Rey, who so underappreciated. I loved his work. So how was it? Was it any different being in Smoky Mountain? The Cornette as a booker got such a good reputation. I would imagine it had to have been pretty exciting.
Well, yeah. Again, I've known Jim ever since I broke in, and this just happened to be one of those situations where Jim, Bobby, and Stan as the Midnight Express had their run in WCW, and they were at the end of their rope, ready to jump ship. And they did. And Jim had this idea to open up Knoxville, Tennessee with Rick Rubin, who had produced a lot of musical acts and a big wrestling fan as well. So Jim, the original idea was for Jim to take Bobby and Stan and the Rock and Roll Express and to duplicate what they did in WCW in Knoxville. Well, Bobby had just signed a big contract. He had a family, and it wouldn't benefit him to leave. So Jimmy called me up and asked me if I'd be interested in coming in. I said, of course. And yeah, that was a great opportunity. So I'm very grateful for that phone call. Very grateful for that opportunity. But what we found out, the wrestling business was changing, and Stan was driving from Charlotte, North Carolina, which is like 200 miles one way to Knoxville, and that just wasn't. He wasn't making the money he was making in Charlotte and for WCW, so he decided it was time to retire and step back. So we needed someone right away, and that's when Jimmy Del Rey came in. Now, I didn't know Jimmy, but he was recommended by Kevin Sullivan, so when he came in, we gave him a chance. And man, he more than held up his weight in the ring. He was very entertaining, and he knew how to wrestle and how to take care of himself. So, yeah, I was very fortunate in that respect. And then getting the opportunity to go to WWF at the time. It was WWF. We knew what it was for. We understood that we were going to go and give the Steiners a match. It would give them a different opponent. But they also wanted Jim Cornette to be the spokesperson for Yokozuna, and I was fully aware of that. I mean, no one told me, but the writing was pretty evident.
And that was SummerSlam 93, wasn't it?
What's that?
That was SummerSlam 93, wasn't it? Something like that, when you wrestled the Steiners?
Yes, SummerSlam 93, I believe, in Detroit.
Was that, how different is that, going from Smoky Mountain locker room to a WWF locker room?
Well, we knew a lot of the guys there. I mean, they had already been, we'd been up there with Scott Hall, and I knew Owen from Germany. I made a couple shots in Germany. We knew a lot of the guys there. The boys are the boys, really, what we found out. I met Hogan early on, but he was already gone. DiBiase I've known since Deep South or Mid South. So I mean, it was different in the sense of the production and the scope of everything, but at the same time, it was basically the boys,
And then you guys, you had a match at WrestleMania 10, right? I think it was like the Bushwhackers or something like that you were against.
Yeah, we opened the pre-show. Yeah, I wish we had a match. We had the pre-show. Yep.
Oh gosh, those guys are nuts. I met them once too. I think they live their character too much.
Yeah.
So then Smoky Mountain, I guess, with Jim Cornette going in WWE, that he closed that promotion down. Somebody told me you guys had a short stint in ECW, which I wasn't even aware of. I loved ECW, but I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Well, we did some shots. We did some matches against Public Enemy. Maybe Dreamer. I had a match with Chris. It was a singles. Came in and put him over.
How is it working? How's it working for Paul Heyman?
That's great. Under Paul, I've known Paul for a long time. He came in and booked Alabama and Continental with Eddie Gilbert for a while too. So I've known Paul for a long time. We went in, and ECW was just like being home, man. I walked in the dressing room, and it felt right. I mean, I didn't necessarily want to work there full time. I mean, nobody asked me to. Let me say that. And it's not that I didn't want to. It's just the opportunity didn't arise. But when I walked in there, it was a very cool vibe. It was a very It was my kind of place. Let me say that.
He's another one. When you talk to Paul Heyman as a fan, he talks to you like you're just a regular person, which I so appreciate. I've seen him talk even to young kids, and it's weird when you see the character on TV and then you see him with kids. It's awesome. He's so willing.
But here's what I think you need to understand, and everybody really does need to understand. A lot of us were fans growing up ourselves. Paul was a fan growing up himself. I was a fan growing up myself, and I know what it was like. When a guy was a jerk, when a guy, somebody that you really admired, someone that you wanted to be like, or someone that you wanted to know, just respect. When they were being real with you, or brushing you off, or just being complete jerks. And Paul's like that. I think he knows that people either appreciate him or they don't. But if they're going to take the time to talk to him and go someone like that, I think he understands that, because he was that kind of fan. I was that kind of fan. So we understand it, and that's what people have to understand too. I think even for anyone listening to this, if you're going to approach someone, not everybody's going to feel the same way, but there's going to be a lot more that do. And as long as you're respectful, we'll be respectful back. And because we do understand, Dusty Rhodes, let me just say this real quick. Dusty Rhodes used to get so much mail at FCW in Tampa, Florida Championship Wrestling, when we were there training. He would sign every picture, every action figure, every item that was sent with a return envelope, and make it a point. I mean, he would sign sometimes 20 items, whatever came in that day, and made sure they got out. I mean, that's Dusty Rhodes, who I know you guys haven't had the opportunity to see him in his prime, but Dusty Rhodes was at one time one of the top 3 stars in this industry. Andre the Giant, the world champion, and Dusty Rhodes. I'm sorry, but that's the way it was. He was an attraction. So I mean, Dusty knows, and he could be Elvis when he wanted to be, but he also could be real with you. And I think when you say Paul Heyman talked to me like I talk to people like a real person. Well, yeah, because he understands, and that's, I think that's the difference in the culture today too. The guys are professional. The guys know it's a business, and they know that if you treat somebody like dirt, they may not come back to your business, and they may not. It's a publicly traded company that they work for, and they can go out and say, "Hey, man, these are the kind of people you have working for you," or they can say, "Hey, these are the kind of people they have working for them. Man, we really want these people on board with us, and we really like them, and they treated our kids right, they treated our people right, and they were actually a pleasure to be around." So I mean, they understand that, and that is cool to know, and that is cool to hear.
That's awesome. So then, after that, you went into a period where you were one of the Bodydonnas. You got to work with Chris Candido, who I know, being in ECW territory here, he is a legend to ECW fans, taken from us way too soon. So I know you got to work with him for quite a while, and with Sunny, especially since she was just starting out her career. That had to have been an interesting time, but they gave you guys the championship, the tag team titles, relatively quickly, which I always thought was such a hats off to you guys. They must have recognized you guys' talent pretty quickly to transition the championship to you so quick.
I wish it could be that way. It was, but honest to goodness, it was just the way it was right back then. I don't know why they did it, except the fact that there was a lot of things going on behind the scenes. I've known Chris since he was a kid. He came to Smoky Mountain. So I know Tammy before she went out in the business when she was 18, and she was taking pictures, doing whatever she was doing then. And it was very nice. It was a very nice gesture to give us a championship, but it was more like a gesture. It wasn't that we went out and made a lot of money with it, but it was very nice that we got to do that for a little bit, I guess. But it was very evident that we were going to be regulated where we were going to be regulated. I didn't care for the gimmick at all. There was, like I said, there was a lot of things going on in my life back then. There was a lot of things going on in Chris and Tammy's life. There was a lot of things going on behind the scenes in the locker rooms, on the road, and things like that. It just made things not a real pleasant time for us. I mean, what should have been the greatest time for us was pretty terrible. And but we got through it. Chris unfortunately passed away way too soon. But enjoyed being around Chris because I knew he had the passion and love for the business, and all he wanted to do was wrestle.
You know, I thought when they had that first ECW One Night Only pay-per-view, I don't know if they scripted it to be the way, but when they did the tribute to the fallen stars of ECW, I love that the fans gave him such a huge ovation during that show, because he really, Lord knows what he'd have done in his career if he was around longer. It really was such a loss.
Yeah, it really was, because he dedicated everything he did to this business. So yeah, it was a loss, and it was terrible.
So then, eventually, from my understanding, I know they had a lot of different developmental territories. I know they had OVW and they had DSW. You trained guys at one of those. Who were some of the guys you trained? Was it Deep South you were at?
Pardon me? Was
it DSW that you were at?
Well, it was Deep South Wrestling. It was OVW. It was Florida Championship Wrestling. We had Ohio Valley Wrestling. So I was the first. We actually started the developmental program in 1996 with Occam Albrecht, Mark Henry, and Dwayne Johnson. So I was the first head coach, first manager of the developmental system. So I'd been through all the systems, and then would visit each one while I was in the office in Stanford up until, I want to say, 2004. Then I had an interruption of service, and then came back in 2007. I went to Deep South Wrestling in McDonough, Georgia, and then which transferred back to Florida Championship Wrestling in Tampa. But I had always made trips to OVW and Heartland Wrestling Association and all our other developmental systems.
So when you're training talent, how rigorous is the schedule? I know some of my students have asked, how many days a week am I doing this? How intense is this for real? They see stuff on like Tough Enough and stuff like that, but I don't think they always know how much you really have to commit yourself to this.
Well, here's my deal. I say this in my book. There's your way, there's my way, but the right way, the only way, does not exist. So I have one way of training people, and other coaches have their ways of training people. But I have found that if you go over anywhere from 3 hours to 4 hours of hard training, you're going to start losing, man. You're going to get fatigued. You're going to get hurt. You're going to get injuries, and it's been proven. But these days, you do train anywhere from 8 to 12 hours. It's not all constantly in the ring. It's not all constantly in in one area. So you may train in the ring for an hour and a half. You may stop and watch some tapes. You may go train in the weight room. Now, they have a complete different system in the Performance Center in Orlando, which I hear is a tremendous building and it's a tremendous program and a great setup. But it is like it's you are a professional athlete. You are expected to be professional at all times, and you're expected to be on time, which means when we say on time in wrestling, we mean 30 minutes early. When we tell you to be there at 8 o'clock, you be there at 7:30, ready to go. It is an intense schedule. It is. It's not as easy as it looks. Everybody thinks, and I've got this many times when I work in the office. People would call and say, "Hey, man, I can do flips. I can do trampoline stuff, man. I can do some real cool stuff." Well, that's not all what this is. There's a method to the madness, and people watch it on TV and think, "Oh, hey, I can do cool stuff like that," but they have no idea. They have no idea. And it is a tough gig. I think the guys work now maybe from 8 to 12, and then have a break, come back and do something else. They work on various strikes, kicks, punches, and various other agenda. They have an agenda now that they follow, and it's a pretty cool gig.
So for the listeners who are thinking about going into this business, if you're in school and you're thinking about making a switch, make sure you're listening, because it is not always all fun and games all the time. It's serious work.
Well, it is. Let me just say this: it is serious work, but it should be fun, and you should enjoy it. But it's the same thing like playing pro football. You have to practice. It's not all about just going out and suiting up one day a week and playing your game on Sunday. No, it is a lot of practice. It is a lot of hard work. But when you get to perform in front of the people you get to perform in front of, that's where the payoff comes. But you can't stop working. I mean, nothing comes easy, and it does require a dedication, a lot of sacrifice, and hard work. So yeah, man, it's I believe what's possible is done. I believe what's impossible will be done. And I'll say this real quick, too, before we get going. You know, I grew up listening to a lot of people tell me something, but when I was like about 14 years old, I had a karate class, and somebody came to give a presentation. And this is the one thing that stuck with me throughout my life. He said, you know, there's three kinds of people in this world. Those who try, and when they don't make it, they say, well, you know what, at least I tried. And then there's those who say, well, you know what, I'll give them my best shot. And when they don't make it, they say, you know what, I gave them my best shot. And then there's a third kind of person who says, whatever it takes. I mean, there's nothing that's going to hold that person down. It's just whatever it takes, whatever I have to do. And then, you know, when I tell people that, and they say, I'll do whatever it takes, then it comes down to, well, guess what? You know, we need you here at this day to put up the ring. I can't because I have to change the tips on my shoelaces. Well, gosh, guess what? that's where you're going to be the rest of your life because you're not going to do whatever it takes. And that's the hard part.
So if it's okay with you, I always try to end with 5 fast questions. Just those, like, first thing comes to mind kind of thing. So I had, of all the arenas, all the places you've been, was there one that was just the best arena or venue you ever had the pleasure of working in?
I don't know about the best, but I mean, probably most interesting because it was the one that I was most curious about was the Olympic Auditorium in Los Angeles.
I don't even know where that is, to be honest with you. That's one I don't. Well, that's what's beautiful about this is Philly fans don't know.
I think it's now a church. It's Los Angeles, California, the 8th and Grand, the Olympic Auditorium. Look it up. Google it. The Olympic Auditorium.
Absolutely. How about, in your experience, who was the best booker or promoter you work for? Your brother excluded, because I know he does a lot of that, too.
Yeah. I don't know. Jim Cornette.
And then which talent, past or present, do you think was or has been passed over who secretly should be world champion material?
I don't know, man. Let me think on that real quick. Gosh, I think Austin got the title. Brock got the title. Man, I don't know if anybody's been passed over that I can really think of to say.
I know a lot of the Philly people are all about Dolph Ziggler. They feel like, but he's had the title. I just wish they would have given it to him a little longer.
Oh, yeah, but he's had the title, I think, 3 times.
Yeah. How about your biggest inspiration in your career?
My biggest inspiration? My biggest inspiration. Well, I grew up watching the Funk family, and they were my biggest inspiration. But I mean, Paul Bosch was an inspiration to me. He was a promoter in Houston who let me work in his office and allowed me to be around and learn the business the way I learned it. And without him, I would have never had this opportunity.
And then, if you could have one match, anybody, past or present, who would you work with right now?
Terry Funk.
That's such an awesome answer, too, because I love watching Terry Funk.
Yeah, but you should have seen him in his younger days. He was incredible. I mean, he was like nobody else.
He's the definition of longevity. He really is. Oh,
yeah,
man.
Yeah.
So for
Bob Armstrong, actually.
Yeah, for real. So for our listeners out there, if you want to check out some amazing matches with Dr. Tom Prichard, please go to the WWE Network, go to YouTube, wherever you got to go. Look up some of the killer matches we've been talking about. The SummerSlam 93 against the Steiners when he was with the Heavenly Bodies. Look up any of the matches we've talked about because they're all wonderful matches and just an awesome talent. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you doing this for us.
Well, I appreciate it very much as well. Anytime, man. I hope you guys had a good time listening.
Thank you so much. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.